may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the king, the public weal, peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Please be seated. Good morning, members. The Senate of Jamaica meeting of Friday, November 11, 2022 is now called to order. In commencing, I see persons sitting in the gallery, and today we have with us Calabar High School, Rabalak. And amongst them, 28 students and one teacher. So, students, teacher, welcome you to the Jamaica Senate, and trust that you will have an exciting day. And we also have persons who are watching online, and I wish to also welcome them. As you will note this morning, our clerk is not with us at this moment, and she's off attending her son's graduation from UTEC. And I'm certain that she's a proud mom this morning. It's a remarkable achievement when you raise your young one and they complete your tertiary education. So, commendations to Ms. Curtis, her son, and other members of her family in that regard. And similarly, President Finson is also off on a graduation in relation to his child. And again, that is a remarkable achievement. All right, statements by ministers. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the Senate are the following. Minister Paper number 92 of 2022 entitled The Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency, PICA, Annual Report for the financial year ended March 31, 2012. The annual report and audited financial statement of the Aeronautical Telecommunications Limited for the financial year 2020-2021. Jamaica Public Body's first supplementary estimates of revenue and expenditure for the financial year ending March 2023. Information Technology Audit Report on the Application Management and Data Automation Amanda Software, Application and Information Security Control. Compliance Audit Compendium Report on COVID-19 expenditures, Ministry of Health and Wellness, and Ministry of Labor and Social Security. And finally, the report of the Commission to inquire into the emoluments of judges of the parish courts and other specified officers, 2021. Thank you, Mr. President.
Bills brought from the Honourable House of Representatives.
The following is a message from the Speaker of the House of Representatives. To the Honourable Senate, I have the honour to advise the Honourable Senate that on the 8th day of November 2022, a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Income Tax Amendment Act was passed in the House of Representatives. Marissa Dalrymple Philibert, CD, MP, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Mr. President, I signify my willingness to take charge of the bill.
A bill shortly entitled the Income Tax Amendment Act of 2022 be read a first time.
Mr. President, I beg to give notice of second reading of the bill.
Petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motion given orally, questions and answers to questions, motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to sittings of the Senate, motions for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the Senate first obtained, public business.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, today it is intended to continue with the contributions to the State of the Nation debate, and it is also intended to take the Irrigation, Validation and Indemnity Act, which was tabled in the Senate last week. I am proposing, Mr. President, that given the presence of the representatives of the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries and the uncomplicated matter of the bill before us, that it be taken first so that we may release the technical team back to their duties at the ministry. And we would then proceed. I understand the first presentation today will be made by Senator Allen, to be followed by Senators Fraser Binns and Senator Wehby. Thank you very much.
In that order?
Oh, I'm not confirming the order, say, for the first. My apologies, Mr. President. Thank you.
Minister Campbell.
Oh, very well. Mr. President, the bill before this House is entitled the Irrigation, Validation and Indemnity Act 2022. This bill, as its genesis from out of Cabinet Decision number 1 of 2022, and Mr. President, I seek your leave. Mr. President.
You are so permitted.
Very well, sir. Most kind of you. It's the inference from my taking. Very well. The bill, as its genesis, from Cabinet Decision number 1 of 2022, and that's dated January 10, 2022, which approved, among other things, the promulgation of validation and indemnity legislation in respect of the National Irrigation Commission Limited as the Irrigation Authority, and 2, the issuance of drafting instructions to the Chief Parliamentary Council in respect to that matter. The foregoing decision came against the background of the expiration of the license granted to the National Irrigation Commission Limited by virtue of the Irrigation Authority licensing of the National Irrigation Commission Limited, Order 2011. This license was granted to the Commission for a period of 10 years and expired on July 10, 2021. Notwithstanding the expiration of the said license, the Commission inadvertently continued to act as the Irrigation Authority without the requisite legislative authority to do so. Consequently, this necessitated the relevant minister to license by order an entity to be the Irrigation Authority for the purposes of the Irrigation Act, and to issue validation and indemnification of the actions of the Commission following the expiration of the license on July 10, 2021. The Commission was subsequently licensed as the Irrigation Authority by the Irrigation Licensing of Authority Order 2022 and affirmed by the Parliament on the 25th day of March 2022 for a period of 30 years. The foregoing order was gazetted on the 28th of March 2022 in the Jamaica Gazette Supplement. The bill having been passed by the Legislation Committee of Parliament, the Cabinet by its decision number 27 of 2022, dated August 22, 2022, gave approval for the tabling of the said bill. The bill therefore seeks to, 1, to validate and confirm all acts of the Commission done in good faith by persons acting on behalf of the Commission during the period July 11, 2021 to March 27, 2022, and to indemnify the Commission, its agents and its officers against liability for the actions done in good faith. By the promulgation of the Irrigation, Validation and Indemnity Act 2022, the Government of Jamaica seeks to have in place the necessary legislative authority to address any possible outstanding liability that may arise to the Commission in the carrying out of its mandate during the period July 11, 2021 to March 27, 2022. In the circumstances, I ask this Honourable House for its full support in passing the bill entitled the Irrigation, Validation and Indemnity Act 2022. I will now attempt a clause-by-clause analysis of this very extensive bill. The bill, it commences with the long title, which states, an act to validate and confirm the acts of the National Irrigation Commission Limited, done in good faith by persons acting on behalf of the National Irrigation Commission Limited, and to indemnify the National Irrigation Commission Limited, its agents and its officers against liability for actions done in good faith and for connected matters. It then flows into a series of paragraphs that I will refer to as the preamble, which provides the antecedents which have given rise to the need for legislation to validate and indemnify the actions of the Commission. The Clause 1, short title and construction. This clause, it provides the short title of the bill, and it indicates how the bill is to be construed when read, and that is for the bill to be read as one with the principal act. Clause 2, this clause proposes to, notwithstanding anything to the contrary in any legislation, validate the operation of the Commission in developing and implementing projects. B, procurement. C, sourcing of funding. D, the recruitment and training of staff. E, educating the public and promoting its services through public relations. F, initiating legal proceedings against its debtors and offenders. G, committing to fund compulsory land acquisitions. And H, engaging new customers for non-potable water. And in relation to all the other acts done in good faith during the period from July 11, 2021 to March 28, 2022, shall be treated as validly, properly and lawfully authorized and carried out, as if the power was lawfully conferred on the Commission. This clause also proposes that every person who has acted on behalf of the Commission in carrying out its instructions during the said period of July 11, 2021 to March 28, 2022, and who may be liable to be proceeded against on the ground that such actions were unauthorized or unlawfully done or otherwise illegal or improper, is freed, acquitted, discharged, and indemnified from all legal proceedings of any kind. And it closes. The bill concludes with a memorandum of objects and reasons. Indeed, I know my friend. Indeed. There's given the time the limitation in time that we have already having started late, I won't make it more expansive today.
Senator Bunting.
Thank you, Mr. President. The opposition has no objection to this tidying up bill. In fact, it was described by the leader of government business as perfunctory. So, in consideration of the three speakers who are warming up for the State of the Nation debate, I will make my comments extremely parsimonious, and I will close to say we support the bill. Thank you.
President.
Minister.
President, I just want to.
Sorry.
Just want to bring attention.
Senator Longmore.
Yeah, just want to bring attention to clause 2. Sorry, clause 2.2, where it is the Queen is quoted, and perhaps we want to amend that to the King. To avoid.
Thank you, Senator Longmore. Minister.
Could we, in the circumstances, Mr. President, take the matter to this particular issue to committee?
Yes, sir.
Well.
That's it? You're through with? You have no other comments? So, Minister. Minister. For the bill to be read a second time.
May I, in the circumstances, ask that the bill be read a second time?
Thank you. The question is that the bill be read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
An act to validate and confirm the acts of the National Irrigation Commission Limited done in good faith by persons acting on behalf of the National Irrigation Commission Limited, and to indemnify the National Irrigation Commission Limited, its agents and its officers against liability for actions done in good faith and for connected matters.
The House will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause. And I should say the Senate. All right, it's, as has been spoken about, it's short, so clauses 1 and 2.
Sir President, Chair, the amendment pointed out by Senator Longmore is prior to clause 1. Am I correct? It's in the preamble.
We get back
Sorry?
to that.
All right, cool.
So clauses 1 and 2. Those in favor?
Mr. President, there is an amendment being requested for 2 subsection 2, where the reference to the Queen be amended to state the King. That is it is one of the 2 places in which the reference is made in this bill.
But it's not in clauses 1 and 2.
We're asking for amendment to clause 2.2 in that regard. Clause 2, subsection 2, Chair.
Clause 2, section 2. Very well. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. So the proposal is that there be an amendment in clause 2, section 2, reference to the Queen, to be amended to King, read King, King's Most Excellent Majesty. So those in favor?
And also in the same clause, Mr. Chairman, to change the pronoun, her to his.
Yes. Thank you, Senator Fontaine.
So for the record, to ensure that it says his heirs.
That is correct.
Right.
You are correct. So we have 2 amendments in clause 2, subsection 2. The first is to remove reference to the Queen and to change that to the King. And in the next line, from her to his heirs. Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it. And clause 2.2 as amended, those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. So clauses 1 to 2, those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it. The preamble, I put the preamble, and I think you need an amendment there.
Yes, Mr. President, the very
same wording to amend the Queen to King, and yeah, that's it there. There is no reference. All right. Those in favor of the amendment? Those against? Ayes have it. I put the title and enacting clause. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage with 3 amendments. Correct? Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it.
Mr. President, I now ask that the bill be read a 3rd time.
Question is that bill be read a 3rd time. Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it.
An act to validate and confirm the acts of the National Irrigation Commission Limited done in good faith by persons acting on behalf of the National Irrigation Commission Limited, and to indemnify the National Irrigation Commission Limited, its agents and its officers against liability for actions done in good faith and for connected matters. The bill is read a 3rd time and passed.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is now intended to proceed with the continuation of the State of the Nation debate, with your leave, commencing with the presentation by Senator Janice Allen.
Senator Allen.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, as I begin my contribution today, I wish to first acknowledge and give thanks for the support of this very Senate over the past year. My colleagues on both sides, and especially, of course, my colleagues here on this side. You've all helped me. You're indeed very special. Extra special. You've all helped me. You've molded me. You've caused me to grow and develop in this role, and I thank you very much. I also want to thank Ms. Curtis, who isn't here today, and we understand why. The Clerk of the House, she and her entire team of the Houses of Parliament, those members of her team, those seen and especially those not seen, because their roles assure us that we are able to meet to the advancement of the people's business, which is our business. Members, our job here is not an easy one. It is a job that would be made all more challenging, however, without the loving support of family and friends. In this regard, I must say that I am richly blessed. I have followed in my father's footsteps and into politics, and it remains my hope that if he was still with us, that he would be pleased. There's also my mother who is watching, Winnie Veronica. And my sister Nicole and all my other family and members of my family who continue to support and encourage and sometimes critique and counsel me. I am most grateful. To my political family, all of you, all of them, especially my members in the West, my mentors in the West, like former Senators Janet Madden and former Senator Noel Slowly. They're always available to me to give me counsel, advice, to help me navigate this very awesome process. But on record, I wish to put special thanks. I keep having a lot of special, but these two are special. Former party leaders, Dr. Peter Phillips and the Most Honourable P.J. Patterson. And I'm sure the Calabar men would agree with, I say, the Most Honourable P.J. Patterson, both of whom have always been available to me as great sources of encouragement and guidance. They have helped me to refine and better understand my role as a young politician, as I now realize I'm called young politician in the streets. Relative. Mr. President, from the outset, I want to make a very special thank you to all the workers, suppliers, investors in tourism. I want to thank them for their continued work, especially over this past year. This vital industry could not have survived as it has without their collaborative effort to address the challenges we have faced. To have witnessed competitors, and some may say even rivals, sit around a table and work assiduously with one common goal, post-COVID recovery of the sector, is an experience that should be emulated. This is the model of the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association, an organization that I believe deserves special mention as a national best practice for problem solving. I want to use this opportunity to recognize the immediate past president, Mr. Clifton Reeder, who ascended to the chair at the start of the pandemic, and throughout his entire presidency, he quietly yet ably championed, negotiated, and summoned support for this very important industry. Yes. I enjoyed working with him, and I now look forward. To working with his successor, the newly installed president, Mr. Robin Russell. I use this opportunity also to congratulate Mr. Adam Stewart, who is the president of the Linkages Council, for his stellar work over the past year, and indeed use this opportunity to also congratulate him on his honorary doctorate recently bestowed upon him by the University of the West Indies. Mr. President, as I make my second contribution to the State of the Nation debate, I find I am a bit more contemplative. My approach to today's presentation is therefore slightly different. For one, I'm compelled to reflect on why these debates are even referred to as the State of the Nation debates. Within its naming is revealed the fact that our mission as senators is somewhat different than our colleagues in the House of Representatives. For one, they have constituencies bounded by geography and are therefore by nature more parochial, oftentimes in deference to the party's ticket on which they campaigned and were elected, and are described not only sometimes as parochial, but sometimes partisan. Yet here, we are each appointed by the Governor General upon recommendation on the leader of the respective parties. So our focus is intrinsically different. Some sources describe us as the review chamber or the upper house. Indeed, we are both. And therefore, the expectation of the public has of us is different. Sometimes more passionate presentations, definitely more directed at nationhood than election cycles and the strictures that come with such cycles. It is our role to buffer the legislature from political torrents, free from the dictates, however subtle, of the executive, though some members here serve there. We must direct our efforts to the service of our fellow citizens, the wider society as a whole, and fueled only by the desire to enrich the parliamentary process in a way that enhances the outcomes for all Jamaicans. And that is why, Mr. President, we don't have sectoral or constituency debates here. Even if, as indeed the case, some here have contested elections or have held places in the other chamber. While here we ought to be doing our work not as if setting a wicket for some future campaign on the political hustings for a seat. Having shared some of what my colleagues by now would say, but we already know that, I make bold to notify the Senate that my contribution today will incorporate a thorough audit of the real state of the nation. A nation whose people are among the most creative, the most resilient, the most inspired in the world. But at the same time, a nation whose people are among some of the most troubled, vulnerable, and dispossessed in the world. In recent weeks, the latter description has been borne out in land tenure issue, and I'm certain my colleague, Senator Fraser Binns, will speak to that. Exemplified in the occasion of the demolitions near Clifton in St. Catherine, the receipt of evacuation notices by residents of the ironically named Pleasant Hill near Ty Dixon in St. Catherine. A nation which in recent weeks saw members of the constabulary force gunned down. A nation in which one day alone there were 12 murders within a parish in a 10-hour period. A nation where it was revealed that the once lauded Jamaica Defense Force is alleged to be fraught with frequent occurrences of sexual abuse of women who made the bold and honorable decision to put on the JDF uniform. A nation where there's no natural expectation to have access to beaches, yet we saw headlines of locals likely becoming disenfranchised as the all-important foreign direct investment landed in close proximity to a celebrated escape that were none other than the Honourable Robert Nesta Marley, Tosh and Whaler, and others who engineered the indigenous reggae music that contributes so richly to the very identity that the world beyond the shores of Jamaica ascribes to us. A nation in which too often there are deaths of newborns due to outbreaks which, but for proper resourcing and management, may have become the next Louise Bennett Coverley, Lois Kelly, or even their sister of the arts, Leonie Forbes, who has now departed to enter a stage beyond this life. Or the next Bolt, Blake, or Powell, or indeed a scientist who could have broken through with some answer to breast cancer among black women. A nation where there are stares and glares from persons hearing my voice right now, but I'm sure not necessarily in this chamber, saying in stern tones, why does she have to bring these things up? Well, to all such inquiries I simply say, I have to bring these things up because these things are happening before our eyes. These things, if we scrutinize them carefully, they're within our collective wisdom as a people to resolve and correct and even prevent. If we could re-engineer the foundation of the Jamaican economy so that now we claim that we're the only Caribbean island economy showing growth since pandemic. If we can design progressive policies that cause our athletes to no longer be one-off gold medalists, but gold medalists per season, several. If we could contemplate common entrance solutions, subsequently known as GSAT and PEP now, to ensure that each Jamaican child achieves a space in secondary school based on aptitude and not last name or address. If we could produce scientists such as T.P. Lecky, Henry Lowe, and Manley West, if we could design the all-inclusive concept to strengthen brand Jamaica and keep tourism prospects alive through all the challenges we have seen, whether it be September 11 attacks, or the Gulf War that followed, or global recessions, or even the pandemic, then, Mr. President, if we purposely scrutinize the challenges that we face and prioritize the use of resources we have without the epidemic of corruption that weakens our dollar and denies our society the real value of taxes we collect, there's absolutely no dilemma that Jamaica cannot solve. But, Mr. President, that little word if, it belies a sometimes inescapable reality. As I speak today, these are the issues and realities that occupy my thoughts. They are the guardrails that train my mind towards realistic solutions designed to respond to the real situation that our Jamaican mothers who depend on the public health system to assist the safe delivery of their children face each day. Mr. President, if others elsewhere, like this U.S. singer Katy Perry, in her song Chained to the Rhythm, are asking, and I quote, "Are we crazy living through a lens, so comfortable living in a bubble, so comfortable we can't see the trouble? Are you lonely up there in utopia, where nothing ever will be enough, happily numb?" Whereas in that very song, Bob Marley's grandson, Skip Marley, charges, "It is my desire, break down the walls to connect, inspire. Aye, up in your high place, liars, time is ticking for the empire. The truth they feed is feeble, as so many times before, the greed of all the people, they stumbling and fumbling, and we're about to riot." In short, therefore, Mr. President, my desire is to prevent the riot and give a possibility of success to the theme that should have united us in this our Diamond Jubilee to reignite our people for greatness. Mr. President, like I said, I'm contemplative this year. As was the case last time around, I hold a portfolio of tourism, but this year it's linked with linkages, twinned with linkages, which is an acknowledgement that as a service industry, tourism serves much like the engine linked to the vehicle which it is installed. Those linkages are channels through which the earnings from tourism enter the real economy and has quantifiable impact on the rest of society. Linkages as well, though, which the challenges of the wider society runs. Challenges such as crime, underemployment, unfulfillment among our youth and workforce filter into the tourism domain and sometimes cause negative outcomes. Mr. President, I must therefore cite both the positive reports from the incumbent tourism minister as well as critique them. You see, we all know at a subconscious level that tourism is good for the economy, the engine of growth, as you will. Yet, can we tangibly declare it? Can we identify in real ways how tourism has transformed the lives of thousands of tourism-dependent families? Are they experiencing Katy Perry's stated utopia? Or are they, like Skip Marley, trying to say, time is ticking for the empire? Mr. President, we have a minister who makes copious grand announcements replete with figures of earnings, bookings, arrival figures, cruise ship stopover. But the truth is, the common man is not feeling it. He's not feeling the benefits of tourism, and even for some who work in the sector, they're not feeling so grand about tourism. And we must address the inequities. We must work to ensure that everyone feels the impact of tourism, otherwise it's unsustainable. That's right. The fact is, many feel the isms of tourism. Some of our workers and nationals who live adjacent to the resorts, who while at work wore masks long before COVID, pretending that everything is Ahriman for visitors and that Jamaica there's no problem. Yet behind grand announcement lives the unrequited expectations of our tourism workers at various levels, that a career would have empowered them to finance their children's tuition at tertiary institutions here or abroad. Let them qualify for and be able to maintain a mortgage for their dream home. Allow them to invest even in proper medical care. Mr. President, everyone in this Senate knows that I'm from Montego Bay, and it has been my permanent residence all my life. I have seen the transitions in the tourism sector up close. My parents operated within the sector, so I know of what I speak. Sometimes it's like having a front seat to the greatest show on earth, and there are other times when it's like witnessing the dashed dreams and hopes, the disappointments of some of the stakeholders. You see, I make it my duty whenever I go to a hotel or any other tourism space. I observe the workers to learn of their names, ask about their children, their parents. I listen to them give the scripted response. And as the conversation goes on, many times you can watch the smiles on their faces change and the truth is revealed in their eyes. I hear stories of many women whose husbands have to go on a work program overseas and leave them, break up their families. This is not their desired action. It causes things to happen to their families, other things to come to the fore. So when the minister makes statements such as significant growth and earnings, when the public hears the unimaginable numbers, they ask then why the place looks so? Why we don't feel like we can even access a well-run public transportation system, or walk on proper sidewalks, or have a working hospital. It just doesn't add up. Mr. President, too many of them become confused by the near $6 billion United States dollars in earnings as declared by the minister when they have received diminishing returns as their wages remain as they have over the many years, but which in real terms as inflation rises and the dollar fluctuates, their wages have diminished, as have their purchasing power. You see, I hear the new JHTA president saying that we shouldn't be asking for increase in wages at this time because it will make us uncompetitive. I really couldn't disagree more. I could not disagree more, because what will definitely make us uncompetitive is when the best of our people flee. How can we, in good conscience, not seek to make adjustments when part of how we will recruit and retain the best of the best is through remuneration? Now, I am not saying, for Cavan, yes. How can we, with good conscience, not seek to make adjustments when that is the very way in which we're going to recruit and maintain? No, I am not saying that we should run businesses into the ground, but we must have the conversation, because this is the linchpin in all of what we face. This is how we will cause a mindset shift from seeing tourism as just a work to tourism as a career. Mr. President, I won't go into the analysis here, but let me place this on the dashboard of the sector. The recent ruling by the courts with respect of private security guards not being independent contractors, but employees, it reads ominously for the tourism sector. It is important that operators within the sector familiarize themselves with the details of that ruling and prepare proactively for what may be on the horizon as a result of that ruling. Last year I spoke about security of tenure, and I use this opportunity again to reiterate that. It is time for the government to do something about contract workers within the tourism sector. It is noteworthy that many of our local owners tend to engage employees on long-term arrangements, but we must have this become a wide-scale practice across all of the industry. Because you see, security of tenure is critical. For one, it addresses the issue of retention of the best within the industry. And the final point, Mr. President, is that inconsistencies and inequities are serious threats to the growth and sustainability of the sector. As a nation, we tend to bend backwards like limbo dancers for visitors to experience a life that quite often is foreign to many locals. Tourists must be safe, but too often we are not safe. Tourists must have access to the best health care should they become ill, but we don't have access to the best health care. Tourists must be met with smiling faces, but many times we ourselves are not happy. As we move to reignite this nation for greatness, it is time we rethink tourism. As soon as Jamaica, the Jamaica that our citizens experience and are exposed to, becomes clean in the streets for Jamaicans, safe in the towns for Jamaicans, healthy in the hospitals for Jamaicans, then and only then will the occasional travel advisory that can sometimes send shockwaves across the sector will be reduced, even eliminated. Because at that time, Jamaica will be that much more attractive, that much more safe, and that much more vibrant, and that much more chosen by foreign nationals desirous of an escape. An escape not just to the tranquil waters and idyllic beaches, but into paradise that causes them to explore towns and attractions, local restaurants, theatrical productions, and I hope at some point soon the Montego Bay Little Theatre will be renovated so that they can truly visit Jamaica and not just a resort on the island of Jamaica. You see, Mr. President, tourism cannot be sustained as some sort of separate existence, like a parallel society within the walls that is foreign to the locals, but in truth, we are tourism. The countries that have transformed their societies through tourism are the ones where visitors are not brought to a made-up place, but where visitors move seamlessly through the social spaces and partake in culture, cuisine, authentic experiences of the countries they visit. That's what I do, and that's what I want for others who visit Jamaica. This used to happen. It used to happen. So the question is, have we regressed? Have we? Maybe it's about time that the government moves to design and implement an EP development strategy instead of constantly talking about it. one that incentivizes investors above and beyond the current fiscal incentive provisions, prioritize EP in prescribed areas to drive economic activities for the benefit of restaurants and shops and transportation. Now, this is not a slight against all-inclusives. Rather, it is a move towards a stronger, more integrated and diversified product that widens the base of the economic participation and which will ensure a faster transfer of wealth to all and to return our tourism towns to the bustling economic hubs they once were. Mr. President, the quality of local infrastructure is another aspect of the Jamaican space that I must address. Again, I'm from St. James. I did say I wasn't going to be parochial, but I can't help it. But Mr. President knows this. I continue to be amazed. In fact, I'm bemused. But in fact, really, I'm disappointed with the multiple missed targets with respect to the completion of the renovation and refurbishment of the Cornwall Regional Hospital. No, I'm just saying. In fact, I hear commitments being made now, new commitments by the Minister of Health and even the Member of Parliament for West Central St. James. But in May of this year, when I visited the hospital site, I was told by the contractors that a fully completed hospital will not happen before December 2024. That's what they told me. We are now November 2022. You can do the math. When our roads are unsafe and cars careen across roadways as drivers either swerve to avoid potholes or just plain impatient as they hustle to another passenger, God forbid that they slam into a tour bus. Because I don't know what facility in Montego Bay, the country's flagship resort city, that can handle saving multiple injured tourists at one time. Now, Mr. President, I will at this point congratulate the Sanctuary International Airport, the Montego Bay Airport, who just this week, as reported in the newspaper, carried out an emergency simulation exercise. Very important, and I congratulate them. And I will read a little bit from the article in the Observer. And this is a quote from the Manager of Commercial Services, Mrs. Sharon Hislop-Holt. She says, "We carried out a full-scale emergency exercise where we simulated an aircraft event occurring over water, and the simulation took place in the White House community in the vicinity of tropical Bliss Beach. This was in coordination with other emergency response services, as well as our mutual aid partners. Participating in the exercise were representatives from the Jamaica Civil Aviation Authority, Marine Police, the U.S. Embassy, the Jamaica Fire Brigade, Jamaica Constabulary Force, and emergency responders from the Cornwall Regional Hospital." So the question arises for me, if it were real and not a simulation, how would it truly have gone at the Cornwall Regional Hospital in the state that it is? I'm just asking the questions. Because I will say it again, if we fix the healthcare system for Jamaicans, we at the same time fix the healthcare system for those who visit Jamaica. Mr. President, at this point I must pause and ask the Minister, where is the 5.7 billion United States dollars he said has been earned over the past 2 years? Where is it being spent? Because our people are saying to show them the money. Is it being spent to fix Cornwall Regional? Show me the money. Or is it being used to clean up garbage in all of the towns across Jamaica from Montego Bay to Ocho Rios or Negril? Show me the money. That's a fire alarm?
Used for the fire brigade.
Just inquiring. I will, but I'm inquiring for a signal notwithstanding.
And
Given
much more than half. I said much more.
No good.
Mr. President.
Minister.
Mr. President, the Speaker's time having expired, might she be permitted sufficient to complete her presentation?
The question is that the Speaker's time having expired, that she be given sufficient time to complete her presentation. Those in favor? Aye. Those against? The ayes have it. Senator Allen.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you very much. Is it being used to improve better wages for tourism workers? Is it being used to fix roads to places like Somerton or Adelphi in East Central St. James, or Johns Hall or Welcome Hall in South St. James, where many tourism workers live? Or Lethe? Is it being used to implement the Jamaica Eye program across the city with an app that might be available on light posts or lamp posts, where you can scan and get information about where you are and the historical reference of where you are, relevance? Because, Mr. President, if it is not being used or spent on things of this nature that are possible for social transformation, then what is it about, really? We must reimagine tourism by involving the communities as attractions, as they expose our visitors to cultural practices, products, and services. The sustainable future of tourism lies in involving Jamaicans in the marketing of tourism and making them stakeholders and shareholders. Our people who work in tourism must be treated with honor that comes with the knowledge that they're builders of the industry, not just to make to be felt like they're dancing for a dollar, rather that they're investing in equity in the economic dynamo that's tourism, that takes care of their own dreams and desires and to fulfill their plans to be professionals, entertainers, chefs, whatever. Because if not, it's not sustainable. No longer should Jamaica have workers masquerading for tourists, feeling second class, fretting if their daughters are safe as they're on bike taxis through the cane fields of Westmoreland because of the absence of a clean, planned public transit system that takes them from home to school and back. Every worker is valuable and must therefore feel valued. They must live in dignity. We often say that tourism is the bread and butter of the economy, but whose bread is really being buttered? Mr. President, our workers need to be full participants in tourism and not just experience the so-so isms. As I said before, for many, tourism is seen as not as a career, but as a work, as a job, and sometimes not even the best jobs. We must rethink tourism. We must rethink training and development, and I know my colleague, Senator Crawford, will speak to that when he presents about training. So the question is, are the training institutions sufficient to sustain the sector? Are the trainees being trained to meet the new standards of hospitality? The fact is we're facing a massive labor shortage, even at the lowest level, and this point was reiterated just this week by an official of the Ministry of Tourism. And it is therefore an indictment on us that we are not able to supply the entry-level labor that is needed to fulfill the basic needs of the industry. It's time that we are working together to resolve this, otherwise we'll remain in a dire situation. With proposed new investments and new hotel stock, room stock going up, and I see the minister has jetted off once again. He's off to where? Saudi Arabia? Yes, Saudi Arabia. I wonder aloud. No Skype, travel. Yeah. I wonder aloud, will we have the required labor to support this, whether in construction or operations phase, because we have an issue and we have to face it, because tourism is much different today than 20 years ago. And in fact, pre-COVID and post-COVID tourism is two different tourism. It changes so rapidly. The industry now demands the highest level of customer service, product adaptation, integration of technology. And we must therefore have the type of staff that can even anticipate needs before they are even known. It therefore means that we need skilled laborers, skill levels at varying levels, whether in customer service, even psychologists, Senator Longmore, behavioral expertise. They're all needed in tourism. So while it is important to market Jamaica, and I know that's been the focus of the minister, while it is important to market Jamaica and what we currently have, it is more important to be in the research and development of policy stage to anticipate the needs and deliver on them for the next set of visitors who contemplate Jamaica. We can't afford to remain stagnant and rest on our laurels. And that is why I'm looking forward to, with great anticipation, to the collaboration between the University of the West Indies, Florida International University School of Hospitality, and the Gordon Wood Stewart School of Hospitality, as they work together to develop the next set of professionals in the industry. But while they do that, HART and JCTI needs to follow suit and radically redesign and develop the requisite programs to support and churn out this line staff that will be needed to support this endeavor. Because in my discussion with industry officials, the biggest problem we face is labor, a shortage of labor. And we must begin to address the issue of remuneration. So when I say, like I said before, when I hear that we should not increase wages because it will make us less competitive than Dom Rep or Mexico, I respond and I say, Jamaica has to decide what is good for Jamaica. We have to decide what our objectives are. It has to be that we're seeking to retain the best of us and cause those who have left to contemplate returning. And one major way to do that is through compensation. You see, Mr. President, they said that the only drain that works in Jamaica is a brain drain. The only drain that works in Jamaica is a brain drain. This brain drain robs the best of us, the best skills, and it breaks up and dismantles and takes away the middle class. It can only be corrected. It can only be corrected. I'm happy this is eliciting the response. It's a real and present danger. It is only by correcting the inequities, Senator Longmore, that we will resolve the problem. Decency replaces inequities. People want decent housing, and that is why they squat. Decent housing through affirmative and progressive policies like rent to own and rent control. Decent healthcare, which I spoke about already, and decent recreational spaces and learning centers for children of these tourism workers. Mr. President, there are some ways to correct the brain drain and to retain the best of us to transform and strengthen not just tourism, but the linkages across the country and the economy. I read an article the other day that said that Vision 2030 is still a key. About a day or two afterwards, there was an article by the POJ saying that we're on target to meet 2030 by 2030. And I thought to myself, like, really? What part of that, what part of Katy Perry's song is the PIOJ referring to? Is it the happily numb rhythm or Skip Marley's The Truth They Feed is Feeble rhythm? Which one? I want to know. And as I wrap up so that we don't have too much stress and more brain drain. Mr. President, in a recent reading, a book by former Senator Arnold Bertram, a book entitled N.W. Manley's The Making of a Modern Jamaica. Yes. I came across a quote which our national hero quoted Frantz Fanon. Each generation must discover its mission, fulfill it or betray it in relative opacity. I am here to fulfill my mission because I feel a deep sense of responsibility not only to my generation and the future, but to my nation. Jamaica is sometimes a contradiction. We have all the right ingredients to be the greatest nation on earth. And at the same time, all the ingredients to be the exact opposite. Every day we see it. We hear how others describe us. We are seeing we achieve amazing things in the world, in almost every area. And then when we look within, we see otherwise. We have seen in recent years so many Jamaicans becoming less hopeful about the future of Jamaica, and they choose to flee, leaving our shores for presumed better and brighter future. As legislators, well-thinking Jamaicans, we must ask ourselves not only why, but what are we going to do about it? The future depends on it. The fact is, the achievement of any vision, whether 2030, 2040, or 2050, it requires all hands on deck. It requires less migration and more return of those who went away. Therefore, as a nation, we must be working together to develop policies and programs that will cause our people, our labor force, to choose Jamaica, to bet on Jamaica, to build Jamaica. Because the trajectory that we are on right now will not cause us to attain it. At the rate we're going, we'll only achieve minimum growth. Popular artist Chronix, in one of his songs, begs Jamaica for a smile. Impressed with her rich history and sweetest gifts, he begs her for a smile, but she retorts that she's tired. The time has come for us to revive Jamaica. We must commit to come to her rescue. She gives them reggae, she gives them beaches, she gives them flowers, she gives them fern, and all she gets is abuse in return. We here in this honorable space must, in thought, word, and deed, commit to putting a smile on Jamaica's face before we expect Jamaicans to smile for others. It begins with an understanding and an appreciation of our people's value, and then a commitment to make them feel valued. We are tourism. Tourism is our experiences, our culture, and most importantly, our people. Let us reignite our nation for greatness as we reimagine and therefore rethink tourism. If we imagine the state of the nation as the face of tourism, then in order to butter our breads, we will be motivated to make the daily experience of Jamaicans a pleasant one. As I did on International Tourism Day, I invite you to imagine a Jamaica that is safe, clean, and prosperous for Jamaicans. Mr. President, don't you agree with me that Jamaica will attract even more tourists? The time has come to make that Jamaica a reality. Let us work towards an improved state of the nation, Jamaica, land we all love. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Oops. Signs and wonders. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator Allen.
Sorry, sorry.
And now we'll have Senator Wehby.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thanks for that listening tourism, Janice. It was very informative. I was thanking you for that listening tourism. It was very informative. Mr. President, Mr. President, I rise to contribute to the State of the Nation debate. Let me say, colleagues, that I am truly humbled by the opportunity to serve Jamaica as a senator, and I want to recognize the most Honourable Prime Minister Andrew Holness for the trust he has placed in me to fulfill this role. Believe it or not, Mr. President, this is actually my third term as a senator, and it's an honor and a privilege and a job that I take very seriously. To begin, Mr. President, I must thank God for his blessings and the health and strength to stand in the Honourable House today. To my wife and my 3 children, I want to say thank you for your support and love over the many years. To my extended family at Grace Kennedy, the Board of Directors, and over the 2,000 staff members of Grace Kennedy, I say thank you for allowing me the time to deliver on my responsibilities as a senator. This is a special year for us at Grace Kennedy as we celebrate our 100th anniversary as a Jamaican company and 100 years being a resident of downtown Kingston. Mr. President, like my fellow colleague, Senator Allen, I sincerely want to thank the parliamentary staff of Gordon House for their hard work, their commitment and professionalism in the execution of their roles. I especially want to recognize, she's not here today, Mrs. Valerie Curtis, Clerk to the Houses. Mrs. Curtis, you and your team have been diligent in your service to your country, and we owe you a debt of gratitude for the work you do for all of us. Mr. President, I also want to recognize the President of the Senate, who I know is watching, for his excellent leadership and guidance of the Senate. And by the way, standing President, I've noticed that you're getting the walk just okay. Well done. I can see that you have been practicing. To my fellow senators, on both sides, it has truly been a pleasure working with all of you. We have had robust debate, Mr. Lambert Brown, in this House. And sometimes we don't agree. But at the end of the day, the nation should know and understand that we are all friends. We have been called to a higher level of service to shape the vision and direction of our country. It is a calling that we must treat with the greatest respect and be always mindful that we are being looked on as leaders. I want to thank Senator Hill, who is not here today, for his kind words in the opening debate, in his contribution in recognizing my chairmanship of JAMPRO, which I was there for 6 years. Let me say, it was a pleasure to work alongside such a fantastic team at JAMPRO, who have done a lot of great work and continue to serve Jamaica's best interests. You know, leader, we really have some great people in government, and we need to recognize when they do well. And I truly worked with an excellent team at JAMPRO, very committed to Jamaica visions and goals. I want to specially recognize outgoing President of JAMPRO, Dan Edwards, whose stellar leadership has guided JAMPRO in delivering on its mandate. Diane, I want to really big you up. Mr. President, I'm very proud of what we have been able to achieve during my tenure as chairman, and I would like to highlight a few, and this is not about Senator Wehby, this is about the team of JAMPRO and the policy guidance that we got from the government of Jamaica. Mr. President, JAMPRO facilitated over US $500 million of investments in tourism. And Senator Allen, I would say maybe it was an innocent omission on your part, but I think you forgot to mention about the tourism workers' pension scheme implemented by the government here, where our tourism workers can finally enjoy retirement and a peace of mind. I think she innocently omitted it. I really believe that. Mr. President, like Janice, I'm also good friends with Adam Stewart, as you would appreciate. And Adam is a great leader, and I want to congratulate him on his honorary doctorate. But can I suggest, if you have not done so already, have a sit down with Adam and speak about the tourism linkages and the impact that it is having on the small farmer, the small manufacturer, and the small man in the street, where tourism, the tentacles of tourism, is reaching out there. Mr. President, over a 5-year period, 2016 to 2021, the global services sector, GSS, otherwise called the BPO, grew from 17,000 jobs to 46,000 jobs as we speak, an increase of 270%. My concern, President, is that of Senator Allen, and it's a big issue that we're going to be facing, Senator Allen, not only for the tourism industry, but we have to ensure that we have the human capital to grow with these industries. Because I can tell you that at 46,000 is nothing compared to the potential that it can be. So we need to plan 5-10 years ahead, Senator Brown, in terms of the skill set that we're going to need for these industries. Mr. President, a project that we are extremely pleased of is a national business portal which promotes ease of doing business by allowing investors to access several government services in one online space. We talk about digital transformation. This government is not only talk, we're acting on it. The National Business Portal. The portal is now moving into a transactional phase where the first 12 business to government processes will be online by January 2023. That is what you call digital transformation. Mr. President, we started to work in 2016 to develop a national investment policy that Cabinet has now approved as a white paper. The policy, when implemented, in my mind, will be a game changer by providing a comprehensive approach across government to attract and facilitate and retain local and foreign investment. Another area that I'm extremely proud of, and Senator Irrigation has been really an apostle of exporting more. Well, we, under the Export Max banner, have trained 46 small businesses, MSMEs, for capacity building so they can now have that technical skill and competence to export more. President and colleagues, one of the areas, and I've spoken about it many times, and I'm very passionate about it, and it's being discussed all over the world, is the issue of food security. I have said on many occasions, in many capacities, that Jamaica needs to cut its imports bill from $1 billion to US $500 million by 2030. To achieve this, we need more import substitution. What does that mean? We need the right policies, business environment, and incentives that will provide the backing to attain this target. We must increase production to improve food security. raise productivity, and create sustainable value-added food products. We must train and develop our human capital to improve productivity significantly. We must roll in the red tape and roll out the red carpet for our local farmers, our manufacturers, and other businesses, so they can build capacity to produce domestic goods at a reasonable price and increase local consumption. Mr. President, this year is a special year for Jamaica, our Diamond Jubilee, 60 years of independence. The celebration has been centered around the theme, Reigniting a Nation for Greatness. I want to use this opportunity to congratulate the Honourable Oliver Babsy Grange, a very hard-working minister, and her team at the Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sport for well-executed, entertaining and engaging celebratory activities throughout the year, especially the Jamaica 60 Independence Grand Gala, which in my opinion, represented the spirit of the people and provided a glimpse of what makes us Jamaican, past, present, and future. Another key activity for us this year was the Jamaica 60 Diaspora Conference. I had the opportunity to serve as chairman of the conference, with Grace Kennedy serving as one of the legacy partners. I want to thank Honourable Kamina Johnson-Smith and Honourable Leslie Campbell for hosting this signature event that brings together Jamaicans from every nook and cranny across the globe to discuss matters of national importance to Jamaica, land we love. I want to congratulate both senators who I have the opportunity to serve on the big achievement of the national diaspora policy, which solidifies Jamaica's commitment to its diaspora and the important role they play in our development. I want to big up our two senators for the national diaspora policy. Congratulations, both of you. The truth is, regardless of where they live, one thing I know, our diaspora is passionate about and love our country. I thank them for their significant contributions to agriculture, education and health sectors, charities and community development initiatives. I want to strongly encourage my Jamaican brothers and sisters in the diaspora to invest more in Jamaica. The truth is, and Senator Allen did touch on it, Jamaica has a rich culture, a strong heritage and legacy as a country. I'm sure all my fellow senators will agree with me when I say we feel a sense of pride when our black, green, and gold flag is flown high. If I may say so myself, Senator Fraser-Binns, when we see our Jamaican products lining supermarket shelves overseas like Walmart, when we hear our reggae music playing on the airwaves, we are all reminded of how much we love Jamaica and what a great country we are. The truth is, colleagues, the truth is that there is a lot right about Jamaica. But I cannot deny we have had and continue to have many challenges. And I say this with all sincerity. Mr. President, I have been working with my current employer, Grace Kennedy. I started October 5th, 1995. And I've attended many, many meetings over the years, some with my colleague, Senator Bunting. I attended meetings with the captains of industries, with private sector leaders in my capacity as a VP of the PSOJ, with prime ministers, every prime minister during that period, and government ministers. And I can sincerely say, except for a few years, when the national debt was the #1 item on the agenda at these meetings, crime was the #1 item over those 27 years. Crime was the #1 item over those 27 years. And if my memory serves me right, it was only 2 years that death was discussed first. And for many years, the murders has been well over 1,000. Mr. President and colleagues, I can say without apology and very confidently that in both houses of this parliament, on both sides, all of us, every parliamentarian in the lower house and the upper house, both of us want to see a safer Jamaica where Jamaicans can live in peace and enjoy our beautiful country. And the question, that I ask myself, Senator Scott Motley, if there's consensus with the private sector, with government, with opposition, and all thinking Jamaicans, why can't we see a significant reduction in the crime rate over the many years? And in those meetings with all the prime ministers in my 27 years, in those closed-door meetings, there was an agreement. There was the will, the political will, to solve the problem of crime. And it's something that I often think about. Why can't we see a significant reduction in the crime rate over the years if all of us want to see a reduction? I will offer you some of my comments. I did some research. Jamaica's homicide rate of 46 per 100,000 is the highest in Latin America and the Caribbean. To put it in context, the homicide rate is similar to that of a civil war. I want to say this very clearly. This is my position. While I understand, Mr. President, while I understand and I respect the ruling of the courts regarding the SOEs, while I understand and I respect the ruling of the courts regarding SOEs, I still maintain that SOEs has its place as a strategic tool to fight crime. That is my opinion. I believe the SOEs would have reduced the current spike in crime if they were still in place. I hear, Senator Fraser-Binns, I hear and respect the argument about protection of the rights of individuals. But then I ask myself the question, what about the rights of the over 1,000 persons who have been mercilessly murdered each year? What about their right to life? Mr. President, I have tried to answer my own question of why crime is always the #1 item on the agenda for the past 27 years. And up to 2 weeks ago, I was in a very high-level meeting and crime occupied 90% of the discussion. I want to share with you my own thoughts. I believe that there is a strong correlation between the high level of debt that we have experienced over the many years and crime. Let me expound on why I say so. Let's look back at 1991. I use that as my base here. Colleagues, in 1991, the debt to GDP ratio peaked at 232% of GDP. In other words, we're borrowing to pay borrowing, to pay borrowing. So, in my language, if this country was a business, it would have gone bankrupt. We didn't have any money to invest in education. We didn't have any money to invest in fighting crime. We didn't have any money to provide in proper health care, housing for our people, and developing the country's infrastructure because we were paying debt. Not only paying debt, we were borrowing to pay debt and borrowing to pay interest. Mr. President, I say this because I was going through this as a young professional. This country at that level of debt of 232% was on the verge of being a failed state. Our social sector was starved and totally decayed. Mr. President, the 90s is commonly referred in our history book as the FinSac era, when interest rates were as high as 60%. Jamaica lost our entrepreneurial spirit and innovation to do business. Let me tell you something. Jamaicans have worked too hard. Public sector workers have made too many sacrifices for us to revise the gains, to reduce our debt and improve our economic outlook. The journey of debt reduction started with former Minister of Finance, Audley Shaw, who anchored the debt restructuring during that period. Followed by Peter Phillips, followed by the Honourable Peter Phillips, followed by the Honourable Peter Phillips, who I make no apology, did an excellent job and is one of the best finance ministers we have had, and we are blessed at that period in our history to have Peter Phillips as a finance minister. Then the baton was passed from Peter Phillips to Nigel Clark. And if you listen to the world leaders and other experts in finance, Nigel is a star, one of the best finance ministers at his tenure here. I'm proud, Senator Bunting. I'm proud, Senator Bunting, that we have a graduate from the private sector of the government and is doing a good job. But you know what I like about Dr. Peter Phillips? He's a nationalist. He's a Jamaican. And I was so proud when Peter, who is in semi-retirement, came out just recently, maybe 6 weeks ago, reminding all of us in Jamaica that prudence is extremely important for the future of our country. In my language, what Dr. Phillips was saying, that we can't run with it again. Or else we're going to go back to that 232% of GDP, notwithstanding fiscal policy rules and commission. So let's look at what happened. Let's look at what happened, Senator Brown. And it's something that we should be proud of, regardless of your political leaning. Over the last decade, with political determination and Senator Bunting and political unity in our economic policy, public debt has been reduced from 145% of GDP in 2012-2013 to 91% in 2019-2020, and is projected to go down even lower. Let me repeat that again. I think it's important for our colleagues and listeners to really understand two words that I said. I said with the political determination, Senator Fraser Binns, and the political unity, we have achieved a significant reduction in our public debt, which means we can invest significantly more in our social sector. Political determination and political unity. Mr. President, I need to congratulate and want to congratulate again the government, especially Finance Minister Dr. Nigel Clark, on the management of the economy, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic. And we have come out of the crisis better than most. The government remains focused on building our Jamaica a place of peace, opportunity, and prosperity. Some of the indicators which show the economy is moving in the right direction, I'll highlight a few. Economic growth of 5.4%. Senator Allen, US $4 billion in revenues. Think about that tourism linkages and how we can improve on it. Think about the tourism linkages. I'm sure she knows. The business confidence grew by 18.3% in the third quarter. Consumer confidence, which is really the test on the ground, was at 162.6% in the third quarter an increase of 4.2 percentage points over the second quarter. Unemployment fell to 6% in April over this year, the lowest in Jamaica's history. And the NIR at 3.77 billion in October. Mr. President, I've made this point about the reduction in debt here because we are moving in the right direction in terms of our economy. In other words, because we have less debt, the government can allocate more resources to spend on social services and the vexed issue of crime. I want to speak a little bit about crime. Mr. President, I want to start off by thanking Commissioner of Police Major Gerald Anderson and Chief of Defense Antoinette Gorman and her predecessor Major Rockmead and all the members of the security force. I want to big up every policeman and woman today. Mr. President, these heroes, these policemen and women, they leave behind their families each day and put their lives at risk so we can feel secure and safe. The job is not easy, and it's often compounded by a lack of resources. Mr. President and colleagues, there's a concern that I have, and it was raised by my colleague, Senator Bunting, last week. And it's about the utilization of resources for national security. I haven't sought to verify the figures, but the checks that I have done, it is just about accurate. There could be a little timing difference. It was noted by Senator Bunting that 17% of the capital budget for national security has been spent this fiscal year. So 17% has been spent, and we have about 4 months to go. And all of you are aware that based on the accounting procedures in government, if you don't use it, you lose it. In other words, you can't carry it forward. Now, I ask myself for the last 27 years, we're talking about crime. And with crime being the #1 problem in Jamaica, I make no apology by saying that spending 17% of our capital budget for national security with 4 months to go is unacceptable. Persons that we put in charge of these capital budgets must be held accountable. I'm suggesting that the Minister of National Security and the Finance Minister form a special implementation committee to determine why the capital budget is not being disbursed, if it's a timing issue. 2, ensure the funds are dispersed by the end of the financial year, and ensure that going forward we have the right resources and expertise to execute on these investments. As I said before, we have the fiscal space to invest more in our social sector, so we need to ensure the capital budget is fully utilized for the fiscal year. There should be no excuse for it not being implemented. Mr. President, with the economy moving in the right direction and the debt to GDP ratio going down, more funds will be available to spend on the social services sector, of which crime prevention is paramount. In addition to having the resources to solve the crime problem, we need to have the right strategies, short, medium, and long term, to ensure resources are deployed in an effective way. I would like to commend the government for recognizing and taking steps to revise legislation that will support the restoration of law and order.
Speaker's time for speaking. Senator's time has expired.
Mr. President, the Senator's time for speaking having expired, and he's just finally finding a point of commonality with me. I think we should give him sufficient time. Sufficient time to complete his presentation, and I hope he will continue in that vein.
Question is that the speaker's time be extended.
Senator Bunting, I'm not sure if I can promise you that.
Senator Wehby, you have to wait on the president. You know.
Sorry, Mr. President.
The speaker. Well. It should come with all the trappings, Senator Brown. The speaker's time having expired. It is moved that his time be extended sufficiently for him to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it. Senator Wehby.
Mr. President, I must confess, in all my 3 terms as a senator, it's very rare that I have to ask for an extension to speak. It's still very rare. Anyway, let us call it youthful exuberance. Mr. President, Mr. President, I'm not going to be like Senator Fraser Binns, who will be very brief at every convention meeting. Who promise? Mr. President, in continuing, thank you very much, colleagues. Thank you for the extension. As I was saying, I'd like to commend the government for recognizing and taking steps to revise legislation that will support the restoration of law and order in our society. The Bail Act, Firearms Act, the Road Traffic Act, and amendments to the Criminal Administration Suppression of Criminal Organization Act, otherwise called the anti-gang legislation. I also support, Mr. President and colleagues, the recently announced amnesty to get illegal guns off the streets, and look forward to the success of the initiative. Mr. President, I have some thoughts on how we can improve the legislative framework for bolstering the response to crime. I believe, colleagues, that we should consider and debate. I believe, colleagues, that we should consider and debate amending the Proceeds of Crime Act to allow for unexplained wealth orders. Cutting off the financial means of these criminals is crucial to the tackling the financial aspect of crime. Mr. President, from what I understand, these criminals' operations are very structured, and they use technology to facilitate their operations locally and overseas, fueling violence and the trade of guns and drugs. I'm therefore suggesting that we consider, Senator Brown, I'm therefore suggesting that we consider and debate amendments to the Telecommunications Act to improve law enforcement intelligence gathering capabilities. This would include telecommunication providers expediting requests from law enforcement to provide customer and call data information and requiring them the data for longer periods. Mr. President and colleagues, I know this might not be a popular question, but the question that I'm asking Senator Bunting, in all sincerity, and it's a question I don't know, Senator Bunting, do we need more expertise to fight crime? In all my reading, this is really an international warfare with criminal gangs all over the world. Do we need to ask for more help from our long-standing partners, the US, UK, or Canada, or anywhere else? I'm asking the question. Remember, colleagues, I am grappling to answer my own question. Having been in the private sector for 27 years and been in all meetings with all prime ministers, all ministers of government, we still can't get this crime situation under control. I'm trying to answer the question by asking other questions. There's one area that I believe can make a difference. and it's the long overdue Police Services Act, Senator Fraser-Binns. I believe that the Police Services Act is another piece of legislation that can really transform the Jamaican constabulary force into a modern and efficient police service. My understanding is that this legislation will lay the foundation for the reform of the JCF towards community policing to stabilize communities gripped by crime, building social cohesion, and in doing so, form crime prevention partnerships. The Police Services Act has been dropped from the legislative agenda, and I would like to see the bill retabled in Parliament as soon as possible. Whatever is holding us back from implementing this act to support the transformation of the JCF, we have to find a way to overcome challenge resources, technical expertise, financing, whatever it is to overcome the challenge. Mr. President, in answering the question of why we have had such high levels of crime, I've also done research by Orlando Patterson and Herbert Gale, and agree wholeheartedly with their findings that crime in the main is a byproduct of social ills and lack of education. Mr. President, with the improvement in the economy, I noted earlier, and the reduction in our debt burden, we will find the fiscal space to address the root cause of crime. We know the government alone cannot solve the social issues we face as a country. The private sector must get involved. I want to commend the private sector organization of Jamaica, and especially their president, Mr. Keith Duncan, which has embarked on an initiative called Project STAR, the largest ever privately led social transformation project in Jamaica, focused on building communities through an all-of-society approach. I really want to recognize Keith Duncan and the PSOJ for the initiative. Mr. President, I believe the future of our country can and will better with the continued excellent financial management and leadership, both by our Honourable Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, and the Cabinet. Let us look on this. We now have more, Senator Gale, to invest in our social services. Yes. Yep. I'm going to share some numbers with you, Senator Gale. And this is coming from the allocation of the budget from 2022-2023. Allocation. Health sector, 93.1 billion, the highest ever. National security, 92.4 billion, the highest ever. 65.1 billion for infrastructure, investment infrastructure, the highest ever. 122 billion for education, the highest ever. 16.9 billion for path, the highest ever. 70,000 new housing solutions by the end of 2025-2026. Mr. President, the theme of my speech is that with excellent fiscal management and a reduction in the debt, our social services, our health sector, education, fighting off crime, the infrastructure is going to improve significantly, and that's why I feel so positive about the future of our country. Mr. President, in closing, I noted in particular,
for too many Jamaicans, the flood has passed, and their lives are bound in the murky shallows of poverty, crime, misery, and hopelessness. The flood of promised prosperity has passed, and those charged with riding the currents, guiding and protecting our people have squandered the opportunities through corruption and incompetence. Mr. President, in this 2022 State of the Nation, the lives and welfare of our people must be the most important item on the agenda. Sir, it is my considered opinion that time comes for us to talk about the things that make us most uncomfortable and not cover them in public relations campaign. Public relations, you see, no matter how good, cannot forever cloak the fear, the hopelessness, the tension, and the anxiety that so many Jamaicans feel. After all, he who feels it knows it. Jamaicans, sir, see the mounds of garbage littered across the length and breadth of this beautiful country.
It's an eyesore.
They see the rats and all the vermin multiply as quickly as their fear of disease and death. Jamaicans know the fear when their children have to wait for hours to walk to Papine, Senator Brown, from Papine to Halfway Tree, because the Jamaica Urban Transit Company is gutted and there are too few buses to meet the schedule. Jamaicans feel the anxiety every time they step into a shop, Senator Crawford, because of the inflation. Flour, Senator Gale, rice, saltfish, chicken, and these are quickly moving out of the reach of Jamaicans.
Whoa.
Mr. President, no PR campaign can cloak that suffering. The minimum wage earner who has to fork out $1,200 a day for bus fare has very little left to feed her family. Without the support, she will remain in the murky and oppressive shallows of hunger and hopelessness. In those murky shallows, the vicious cycle of generational poverty will continue. Mr. President, since most Jamaicans don't talk to the dead, we will not claim to hear the dead babies crying, but we feel the pain of the families. As a mother, I feel and share the anguish and the pain of being let down by a failing government which lacks accountability and uses its parliamentary majority to limit transparency. Mr. President, time comes. The Right Honourable Norman Manley believed that education was the tide poor Jamaicans needed to lift them out of extreme poverty, and so he introduced common entrance. The Most Honourable Michael Manley recognized that our farmers were barely eking out a living on the scrag lands that they were relegated to, and he created Land Lease Program. The Most Honourable Percival James Patterson created PATH and the National Health Fund to help the poorest amongst us. And Sister P, the Most Honourable Portia Simpson Miller, knew that the tide to lift the poor out of poverty was suppressed by high debt. She implemented the Economic Reform Program, Senator Wehby, to reduce our debt, Senator Wehby, and to make it more available to spend on health care and social programs. She championed the need to balance the books while balancing people's lives. Regrettably, Mr. President, the people are not feeling the gains from the debt reduction. The $93.1 billion that Senator Wehby spoke about is not being felt by persons who have to use the public health system because of much of it is lost through mismanagement and corruption. Billions of dollars wasted, stolen, or mismanaged. The litany of acts, including the latest HAJ, have robbed our people. Mr. President, these are billions that could have been used to lift the people from the murky and oppressive shallows where they have been stuck for far too long. Corruption, you see, has stolen our wealth and blunted the promise of our people. It is not sufficient for us to stand up and we can say that Jamaica has increased its standing on the International Corruption Perception Index. And it is commendable. But that is not the lived reality of our people. The nationwide Blue Dot poll found that 55% of Jamaicans believe that the Andrew Holness-led government is very corrupt. And that is up from 37% 12 months ago. But Senator Crawford, what is even more instructive is that according to the same nationwide Blue Dot poll, 65% of independents and 32% of JLP supporters view their government as corrupt. And not just as corrupt, but as very corrupt. Now, Mr. President, if 1/3 of the people that I serve see me in this way, then I know time comes. So, colleagues, we can set up 100, 1,000 institutions to improve our standing on the Corruption Perception Index. But if corruption increases, then these institutions mean zero to people. We look at the Integrity Commission Act, Senator Brown, and it says that all parliamentarians must file their annual declaration and be certified. But can all of us say that we have filed and been certified? Can the country's top leadership, Senator Floyd Morris, say that they have filed and be certified? So if we are serious about corruption, it is not sufficient to have the institution, but as leaders, we too must comply. So let me say this, colleagues, because I hear the whispers, and we have to talk about the uncomfortable truth. But let me tell you, Jamaicans don't care if PMP more corrupt or JLP corrupt. What they know is that time come to end the corruption. What they know is that their well-being is being affected, and time come to surgically remove and radiate the cancer of corruption that is killing Jamaica's promise. So consider how the struggling father or mother who wakes up before dawn every day and gets in after dark every day, goes out to work honestly and endlessly to make ends meet, yet he still can't own a home or provide adequately for his children. And then around him, he sees governments squandering resources on travel, cake, parties, or big contracts to friends. They see people who enter national leadership with very little, and in a short time, they have the big houses, the luxury vehicles, and all the trappings of wealth so vulgarly displayed. We as parliamentarians, we as leaders on both sides should ask ourselves, what kind of message are we sending? For most of our people, there is injustice everywhere. They have no hope, they are angry, detached, and they have nothing to look forward. So how can we then expect them to feel a part of the society? They have lost faith in the country's leadership. Time comes to lead by example and put people and policies, put people at the center of policies and programs so they can achieve their dreams. I want to turn and quickly look at the matter of the environment and climate change. And as I speak on this area of environment, I sincerely wish to thank Minister Samudo for his reaching across the aisle attitude on these matters. It is the opposition's position that areas of the environment are too critical to be colored, and we will continue to work with the government to achieve the national good and I have no doubt, Senator Gale, that in short order, when we become the government, that we will look forward to working alongside the opposition as we continue our quest to protect Jamaica. Mr. President, our economic and social security is intertwined with a healthy environment.
Yes.
If we're really serious about protecting the environment and combating the effects of climate change, then we have to make the environment and climate change a bread and butter issue for all Jamaicans. A poor mother of two who earns minimum wage, after she pays bus fare, sends the kids to school, and buys their school supplies, she really does have very little left for food, for gas to pay electricity. And so what happens, particularly in rural areas, is that she turns to cutting down trees, to make fire to cook, or for coal to burn just to make ends meet. And this happens in our 2022 Jamaica. So then, how can we go to her and talk to her about climate change and the need to conserve? Mr. President, we cannot be serious about the environment if we do not empower our people economically. The harsh reality is that when people are desperate to find food to put on the table and shelter, the environment is simply not top of their minds. At the risk of being misunderstood, let me say that the opposition is not saying that poverty leads to environmental degradation. What we are saying is that within the context of economic survival, persons will choose economic over environment. And because of this, we have to empower them so they do not feel that it has to be either or. Today, as the countries represented in COP27 in Egypt, we must consider the challenges that Jamaica as a small island developing state faces. Climate change impacts every aspect of our country. We see the effects daily: warmer temperatures, rising sea levels, and extreme weather conditions, all of which damage property and critical infrastructure. They impact our human health, productivity, and negatively affect sectors such as agriculture, forestry, fisheries, and tourism. So we see the effects in our economy. In 2008, Senator Rodriguez, the damage caused by Ivan was 8% of the country's GDP. In 2021, the country spent approximately $10 billion on flooding. And in 2022, we spent $889 million on damages from Tropical Storm Ian. And the hurricane season is not yet over. We have to do more to make our country truly climate resilient. We have to bring the society along with us so they understand the importance of climate resilience. We have to create affordable, safe, and adequate shelters so our people are not forced to live in substandard houses on gully banks or flood-prone areas, and later to become the bane of the existence of political leaders who view them as wearing a different color.
That's right.
Mr. President, for a tropical country, every single household should be fitted with solar panels.
Yes.
In this regard, it is the opposition's position that the government must launch a national initiative to encourage the use of solar energy in all buildings. It requires creativity. So we're going to have to do a further reduction on the cost of solar panels and batteries. but we need to be creative. We need to look at government incentives such as tax holidays or credit or moratorium and income tax, not just for companies, but also for individuals who install solar panels. The government needs to work with private sector and private banks to ensure that there are lower interest rates for persons who want to get a loan to install solar panel. And we must also immediately, I said it already, I'm saying it again, we must immediately move to change the National Housing Trust policy, thereby making it mandatory for every person with an NHT loan. Every person with an NHT loan, whether new or existing, to get a special loan for solarizing their homes. That, Mr. President, is how we bring the country along with us as we become climate resilient. Mr. President, it is no doubt that more and more Jamaicans are becoming aware of their rights and their environmental rights. And as the country experiences more environmental breaches, or as the country becomes more aware of environmental breaches, there is a need for a modern system to deliberate on environmental issues quickly. We know for a fact that some environmental matters have been in our court system in excess of 3 years and still have not been resolved. But the very nature of environmental issues require that they are dealt with alacrity, with due recognition to the cultural, historical, economic, and ecological imperatives. Therefore, we believe that time comes for a special tribunal to be established to focus on environmental matters. The ever-evolving international and national environmental law and principles such as loss and damage requires this. The recognition of the interconnection and the link between human rights and the environment requires this. The threat of climate change requires this. And the length of time it takes for decisions to be made in our court system requires it. And you may ask, Senator Gale, so where will the funds come from? I know. It's called the environmental levy. Presently, the proceeds of the environmental levy is paid into the consolidated fund. The government needs to bring its best minds together and see how we can carve out some of that proceed towards funding this tribunal. And it is not a new concept, because we see environmental courts established in Australia, Denmark, the United States, Thailand, Kenya. And in fact, in some countries, they have a land and environmental division of their already established court. The objective at the end of the day is to make environmental justice real and accessible to the citizenry. If we, Senator Morris, allowed the tide to pass, we will be stuck in the murky shallows of environmental degradation and economic hardships. I look briefly on food security. For those of us who have families to feed, we see and experience daily the rising cost of food. The country's food importation bill tells the story, rising from 1.025 billion in 2019 to 1.122 billion in 2022. The supply chain problems and the war in Ukraine will only continue to make things more difficult and affect the food price. The country, therefore, needs an urgent and practical plan to improve our food security. And if this is the case, then how come we continue to use our best agricultural lands, Senator Scott Motley, for housing? How can we, in 2022, have, Senator Wehby, idle agricultural lands when the country, when the world is on the brink of food crisis? Colleagues, something is wrong. Where is the NRCA and the Land Development and Utilization Commission? The Land Development and Utilization Commission was charged or is charged under the Act to ensure that there are no idle agricultural lands. The LDUC needs to do its work and ensure that there are no idle agricultural lands in this country. We need to work the land and feed our people. Yes. Mr. President, in tackling the issue of food security and poverty, the government has to move away from its present policy of giving agricultural land to big corporations and friends and to make it accessible to any Jamaican who wants to farm. And to give support to this action, I quickly suggest that we bring back the AMC to ensure that there is always a ready market for this produce. This, Senator Wehby, is how we build food security locally, but how we also cut our food importation bill. And then we have to look at the very emotive issue of beach access. I'm a girl from St. Anne. I grew up in St. Anne. I go to the beach. I remember every summer we used to have a church trip and go to Puerto Rico Beach. But I also know that it wasn't unusual for us to just jump on a bus and go to Duns River or Puerto Rico. We would cook up a nice pot of food and we would eat and have a good time with our family and friends. But those were the days. So much has changed. We do not have nice, clean beaches anymore, and our access to many beaches have been restricted. Mr. President, the uncomfortable truth, Senator Gale, is that with the exception of a few limited instances, there is no right of access to beaches in Jamaica for Jamaicans. There is no right of access to beaches in Jamaica for Jamaicans. The uncomfortable truth. The Beach Control Act was designed for a period and served its purpose well. Though well-intentioned, after 40 years, time come for a new act.
Yes.
We need a new beach control. We need a new beach control act. But in talking about the act, we must ask what happened to the revised beach control policy from last year. Mr. President, time come to review the Beach Control Act. We must look at things such as how and when beaches can be privatized. Senator Rodriguez, we must have provision such as access to all Jamaicans to our beaches. It is our position. It is our position that at minimum there should be at least one public beach per parish open to all Jamaicans without limitation and enjoying, Senator Crawford, the same standard of facilities as any private beach. Time come, Mr. President. But equally important, colleagues, to access to beach is that this revised Beach Control Act must have built into it the requirement for community consultation when these assets are being privatized or divested. We hear too many stories of people who have earned some rights to a beach, the fisher folk or otherwise, but are denied access as the property is sold without their consultation or knowledge. They wake up to barriers or to no trespass notice, putting their trade, livelihood, and even Senator Campbell, their right to shelter at risk. Senator Campbell, you will agree that we cannot continue to treat our people like this. We can't allow semantics to treat our people like this. Time come to put the Jamaican assets in the hands of responsible persons. Time come to ensure that the assets are not just given to persons who are genetically connected. Mr. President, it is not a secret that I have a pet peeve. No, I'm not wearing my Westwood jumper today. But the truth is that when I sat on that side in government, I spoke about it, and every opportunity I get while sitting on this side, I speak about it. And it is the ills of landlessness in this country.
Yes.
It is undoubted that this is a vestige of slavery. But after 60 years of independence and 150 years of emancipation, we cannot truly blame slavery for the state of landlessness in Jamaica. Mr. President, time comes for us to take a holistic and a national approach to land ownership. It is not enough to simply amend the legislation here and there or to do a project in a...
Senator's time for speaking has expired. Minister.
Mr. President, the Senator's time for speaking having expired, might it be extended to permit her to complete her presentation?
All right. You have heard the question, members. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
The President, you may want to go to the next interruption now.
I've seen it, so that we just continue and flow to the end. Minister.
Mr. President.
Where the substantive president is, it may be.
Mr. President, might the Senate be permitted to sit beyond 1:30 to complete the business of the day?
And you have heard the question, members. Those in favor? Those against, the ayes have it. Senator Fraser-Vins.
Thank you, Mr. President. As I was saying, sir, it is simply not enough to amend the legislation and to do a project in a preferred constituency or a parish, as you see operating in this new dispensation. The piecemeal ad hoc approach has been tried, and we know that it simply does not work. It is time for us to put land in the hands of the landless. Let us work together. Time come to find practical solutions. And the truth, Mr. President, is not that difficult. We can start with government lands. I have said it before, and I'm saying it again. Time come for us to review the limitation period for persons to claim ownership of government land. It is a regressive step and a regressive leadership when any government puts more government lands under the difficult 60-year rule at a time when the country is crying out for land rights and land ownership. The government of Jamaica is the largest landowner, whether you want to be crown land or you want to be just regular government land. But the government is the largest landowner. And the truth is, you can't truly account for everything you own. Yet at a time when so many people are trying to find basic and safe housing, its first response is to bulldoze persons. The way to resolve squatter settlements cannot be to bulldoze people's homes. There has to be a better way, a more humane way. We have to consult and engage with people. Your words. Mr. President, at the risk of a point of order, I have to say something most uncomfortable. Because we have to ask, where is this government's head and heart? After such a national outcry, Senator Campbell, and condemnation with how the people of lands adjoining Clifton were treated, we thought that at least the government would have learned and at minimum consult. Call a meeting of the community, meet with the persons, and work out a reasonable and beneficial solutions. And if we have to relocate, then that is also discussed. But instead, after all that has transpired, the government without more has once again served notice on the people of lands adjoining Clifton. Maybe it is me, or maybe Senator Allen, it is just the party that I belong to. But I believe that a better approach would be to call a community meeting and discuss the matter rather than using this means. It leaves a lot of questions. Perhaps another watershed moment. We wait. But what we do know is that this is not progressive leadership, and this is not progressive government. Time come, Mr. President, to change the way we do things. Mr. President, the opposition's position on squatting is unequivocal. We do not support squatting, but we do not believe that Jamaicans should be made double victim by the government because of a system that has been facilitated by governments where they are the victims. Senator Campbell, listen and learn. Mr. President, for most Jamaicans like myself who grew up in the country, not owning land, not having family who own land and not having that inherit, settling on a parcel of land is so much more than squatting. Yes. It is so much more, Senator Campbell, than having a house. That is their security. It is their identity. It is their sense of belonging, their connection to family, kingship, heritage. So when any leader, regardless of what side they come from, comes and bulldozers them, they're not simply destroying their physical homes. They are destroying the core of these people. They're destroying their investment. They're destroying their sleepless nights. They're destroying the nights when they have to go to bed hungry because they have to save the money to buy blocks. They're destroying their pride. They're destroying their self-worth. They, Senator Campbell, are destroying their future and their sense of belonging. If I can cite a notable Caribbean calypsonian, Senator Donald Scott Motley, the mighty Gabby, who not only spoke about government boots, but spoke about the pain and the anguish experienced when removed from homeland property. And though speaking of the reality in another Caribbean island, we can all relate to Emerton, as indeed it could be called Buckawall, Clifton, or Pleasant Hill. And Gabby said, "You ask me to forget that my grandmother was born right here, so. All right, I say I shall go. You tell me to forget. It is there that I want my own children to grow. All right, I say I shall go. But Senator Cavan Gale, I hope you understand how I feel about Emerton, my homeland, my homeland, my homeland. And I hope you know it is true that I will never forgive you because look at what you do to my Emerton. You tell me to forget that you bring, Senator Gale, Damien, work with me. You tell me, Senator Gale, to forget that you bring bulldozer and push down the houses so. All right, I say I shall go. You tell me to forget that you uproot my people and scatter them to and fro. All right, I shall go. You tell me to forget that you did them wrong things and didn't let the children go. All right, I say I shall go. Senator Braham, I hope you understand how I feel about Clifton, about Pleasant Hill, about Bob Marley Beach, their homeland, their homeland, their homeland. And I hope leaders know it is true that our people will never forgive us, because look what we've done to their Emerton, to their Backer Wall, to their Clifton, to their Pleasant Hill. Mr. President, time come to take a new look at what ownership means for Jamaicans. A lot of effort has been made to popularize NIDS on the selling point that it will give identity to many Jamaicans. And Mr. President, we, the opposition, supports the National Identification Program. But let it be known that identity will not be settled with NIDS. Only when we settle our people on land that their identity will be settled. NIDS cannot and will not give the sense of connection and belonging that our people seek. As leaders, time come. Time come for us to accept and recognize that our people's identity is tied with their ownership of land. That is where they are connected. They feel history, and no amount of bulldozering or relocation will change that. And so, Mr. President, if as leaders we are serious about attacking landlessness in this country, let us fix the cause and not the symptoms. Let us change the laws. Let us change the processes. And importantly, let us engage the people. That is how you create the social revolution needed to fix this country. Norman Manley, Senator Braham, father of independent Jamaica, understood this. And in passing the Facilities for Titles Act, he said, land is the only source of the material life of the people. It provides food and shelter. It furnishes work and wealth. It is the basis of all production, of all development, of all security, of all growth. It is in very truth the root of our being. Michael Manley understood the importance of land ownership, and in the 1970s, he sought to put lands in the hands of landless with the programs such as Site and Service and Land Lease. In the 1990s, P.J. Patterson introduced Operation Pride and incremental infrastructural development. In 2000, we had the establishment of LAMP to make land titling and regularization easier, while separating the issue of planning from titling. Portia Simpson Miller understood it, and she ensured Senator Brown that sugar workers received service lots or houses at Bell Rock, at New Yarmouth, at Frome, Monmouth, Bernard Lodge, and Appleton. And Bunkers Hill. We on this side understand it. And Mr. President, if you don't understand it, you simply can't cross it. We understand it. The PNP sought to ensure that Jamaicans from all classes, but especially the working class, could have a piece of this rock. Was it always perfect? No. But history has shown, Senator Rodriguez, that revolutionary actions are not always perfect. But at the end of the day, the records will show that thousands of Jamaicans were able to own a piece of the rock through these initiatives. Isn't that what we all want? Mr. President, time come to have a progressive government which will continue the work of the greats as Norman Washington Manley, Michael Manley, P.J. Patterson, and Portia Simpson Miller. Time come for the government to use its advantage as the largest landowner to create more landowners and expand the ownership society. Time come to change the tide and lift Jamaicans out of the murky shallows of poverty. Mr. President, as I close, Rahul Gandhi said, "A rising tide does not raise people who don't have a boat. We have to build the boat for them. We have to give them the basic infrastructure to rise the tide," end quote. The government, therefore, must build the boat so our people can take advantage of the wind and the tide and create a better future for their families and end generational poverty. Mr. President, as I close my State of the Nation for 2022, I believe that time has come for a reprieve for every victim of land, social, economic oppression, for every victim who has ever been forced to pray to God not with joy but with despair. It is a cry for help, a summons to act now. Time come. Time come, Mr. President, to end corruption. Time come for real economic empowerment. Time come for a national consensus on climate and the environment. Time come to give land to the landless, breaking our people fully from the shackles of slavery. Time come for every Jamaican to have safe and comfortable shelter. Time come to end injustice in all forms. Time come to put our people first. Time come, Mr. President, to restore hope and let the tide lift all Jamaicans and give them progress and a prosperous life. Mr. President, time come for not just one, but for every single Jamaican to sing the words of the popular song, "My Dream, My Dream." Indeed, Mr. President, time come. May God bring good tides to our beloved Jamaica, and may He bless our people. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Fraser-Binns. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, it is not intended to do any further business.
All right, just take it easy.
It is not intended to do any further business
Yeah, ask
today.
for the suspension of the minister.
I understand there's a motion to be taken.
There is, but suspend the
Might I ask for suspension of the State of the Nation debate until a date to be fixed?
Thank you. And you have heard the questions, members. Those in favor? Those against? Ayes have it. I understand there is an intervention to be made. Senator Campbell Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to acknowledge Youth Month 2022. It will be a short intervention, Mr. President, but I think when our youth form more than a quarter of the population of the country, and by youth we mean persons aged 15 to 29, it is important, 15 to 29, it is important that we acknowledge this group of people who not just form the future for this country, but are also a part of the present of this country. And I ask if we could just, I have some copies of the National Youth Policy, the popular version. I'm asking that each member of the Senate receive one. If you don't feel you have use for it, please give it to a young person, but it's really set up in a way that's user-friendly. It's not just a big, boring document. The ladies at the back will distribute them. I'll also ask them to give each senator a copy of the Youth Month calendar, which outlines the activities that have been scheduled for the month. Hopefully, we'll have senators participating in some of those activities. Mr. President, November is commemorated annually in Jamaica as Youth Month, and each year the Ministry of Education and Youth, through the Youth and Adolescent Policy Division, coordinates a series of activities that aim to address limitations to the psychological, socioeconomic, and personal development of our youth, and serve to highlight and celebrate the achievement of and strides made by young people and for young people. Annually, the Youth Month's activities are guided by a theme aligned to the primary objectives of the month. This year's theme is Reignited, Empowering Youth for Jamaica 60 and Beyond. Activities of Youth Month in this our Jubilee year include the Prime Minister's Youth Award, church service, the 13th sitting of the National Youth Parliament. There will be round-table discussions, among other things. Mr. President, in addition to the activities spoken of, I take this opportunity to remind all our young people in Jamaica that the nation needs you in order to grow and to continue to be the best country in the world. While the nation needs you, it also owes you an obligation, and it is a commitment of the government of Jamaica to continue to support youths of Jamaica, not probably, but definitely. Mr. President, we can always find areas in which improvements can be made. Of this I am sure. I am as sure of that as I am of the fact that our Jamaican youth carry a gene that makes them special, more special than any other young people in the entire world. During November, let us celebrate, let us honor, and let us boost our young people more than ever before. Mr. President, if it pleases you.
Thank you, Senator Campbell Rodriguez. Senator Morris, Gabriel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to join my colleague and the rest of this House to wish all the young people across Jamaica a happy Youth Month. I reflected on the theme as the Youth Month was launched last week in Portmore, and I found it to be a call to action. And I think as we continue to celebrate the activities of Youth Month, we must contemplate even more the action that we can take to uplift, to motivate, and to support our young people. I agree with my colleague when she says that our young people are indeed special. But one of the things over time that has happened for young people is that they've noted that it's much more lip service over action. Much more lip service over action. And this month, I hope that we can begin to improve on the gains that we've already made for our young people. Senator Rodriguez, I know that we both agree on the expansion of the youth service. I'm hoping that going forward we can see our youth service expanded to support and to provide our young people with the skills that they need to exist in this world. So, Mr. President, what I will end by saying is that there's much that we agree on that needs to happen for young people. For me, it should never become a political football because this is our future that we're talking about. And so, this Youth Month, I want us to get serious about truly reigniting this generation for Jamaica 60 and beyond. To the young people who might be listening or might hear this, I want to say that your voice is important. We keep saying it. We need to hear from our young people. But to you, my colleagues, I say that we must listen when our young people speak. And they're speaking out. So we have a lot to do. I hope that we can begin that work seriously, because our generation, my generation, and generations to come depend on it. So to youth everywhere, happy Youth Month. And Mr. President, please permit me also to mention in this space a young person who I believe has done an extraordinary thing. He's Mr. David Salmon, and he is the Rhodes Scholar for Jamaica this year. So I want to congratulate him, and I want to wish him all the best on the journey ahead. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Morris. Minister Campbell. Don't pay attention to Senator. Get to the important things.
It's a 1 minute bush, sir. It's Mr. President, it is not contemplated for us to do any further business today. I therefore ask that the House adjourn for the Senate. Adjourn for a date to be fixed. Thank you, Mr. President.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The Senate now stands adjourned.
Do you wish there were a way your community could get funding to improve a school, health center, sports